Hey folks, you're listening to episode 50 of the Deeply Devoted podcast, the ministry of the E-Free Church of Bemidji, Minnesota. My name is Eric Nygren. I'm one of the pastors on staff here at E-Free Bemidji. And today on our podcast, we've got a very special guest, a special episode planned for our listeners today. This fall here at our church, we are inviting married couples to come check out something brand new, something called Grace Marriage, which is a new marriage discipleship opportunity that we are offering and launching here this fall. And joining me today on our podcast remotely via Zoom is Nikki Tabor, who serves as a church support and connections representative at Grace Marriage. And so I'm so excited to talk with Nikki today so that our church can learn more about this really incredible opportunity for our church family. So, Nikki, welcome to our podcast.
Yeah, thank you so much, Eric. It's been so great working with you so far, just planning this new discipleship pathway for your church and investing in marriages.
Yeah, Nikki and I have had a few conversations along the way to get this thing going, everything from what is it going to take for us to get this started, and to how's it going to integrate into what we're already doing in our church. And so this episode really, for our church family, is to kind of give a big picture of what this is all about. Now, just to give a little context, last spring I was attending the Gospel Coalition Conference out in Indianapolis. And if you've ever been to a conference like this, you walk into an exhibit hall, there are tons and tons of exhibitors and vendors and ministries. And that's where I learned about Grace Marriage for the first time. And to be honest, with so many tables and vendors, I probably would have walked right by because I wasn't familiar with the ministry. But what stopped me was a conversation I had with a representative that was there that day. And they asked me a question, something like, what does your church do to disciple married couples in between premarital counseling and crisis care? And I remember stopping and thinking, that is a really good question, and I don't know that I have a really good answer to that. And so it got me thinking about this concept of marriage discipleship. Nikki, as we get started here, would you just give us kind of an overview of what Grace Marriage is, and maybe a little bit about how this ministry came about?
Yeah, absolutely. And Eric, I'm sure, as you know, you're among the majority of churches not having an answer to that question, because 72% of our churches in America do not have any substantive ongoing marriage discipleship. Between that premarital and crisis care, most churches don't have anything that they're doing on a consistent basis. So that's kind of where Grace Marriage got its start. We are a marriage ministry that serves churches in providing ongoing discipleship and investment for marriages. So we have 7 years of curriculum that is designed to create a space for couples to come together and intentionally work on their marriage and invest in it. So it's not about crisis or being in a situation of struggle. It's more about how do we really strengthen this relationship and be intentional in developing our relationship so that when we come across struggles, we have a strong foundation. Um, Interestingly enough, Grace Marriage was born out of Brad and Marilyn's first year of marriage being a huge struggle for them. Brad and Marilyn Rhodes are the co-founders of Grace Marriage, and they share their story. They have a book, but in their first year, Marilyn said, Brad was really great when we were dating. It was fun. He was romantic. It was so exciting. She said, and then we got married and he became the budget man. And he didn't really know what it was like to prioritize connection. And just that family of origin kind of came into play. And all of those differences became glaringly obvious. And it was during Marilyn, her quiet time with the Lord, that she came to this, kind of conclusion that I'm going to love you and be the best wife that I can, but I'm going to focus on my relationship with God and let that fulfill me. I'm no longer going to come to you for these things. That was kind of a wake up moment for Brad of like, yes, and also I need to be a husband that you can come to.
Yeah.
And so fast forward 10 years, they have a marriage that is, just beautiful and joy filled. And people started coming to them for premarital counseling, which led to Brad becoming the marriage pastor at his church. And so we just celebrated the 10-year anniversary of Grace Marriage
Wow.
being available in churches, and this ministry being something that we can impact more than just the families at the church that Brad's the pastor at. So that's really where it came from, is how do we take that grace and extend it into our marriages?
Yeah, I like how you said that. It's an opportunity for couples to invest in their marriage, and that's really what I've been thinking about. Even as I've been thinking about how will this opportunity be a blessing to couples in our church family, I can't help but think, just as a husband, as I've been talking with my own wife about, well, this is something that we want to be a part of too,
Mhm.
not just in a leadership capacity, but as a participant. And we'll get into some of what it really looks like here. But sometimes we think of um, these things are offered for those couples that are in trouble or near trouble. And certainly, I'm sure this would be a blessing for couples that might find themselves in a tough spot. But I hope that as we go through this, that folks will understand this is for all of the above. This is for everybody.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So as I was looking through the material, Nikki, there's a phrase that just keeps popping up, and it pops up even early in what we're going to work through here this fall, and it's this phrase, grace-based marriage. Um, and so, Nikki, I know that we'll touch on that in some of our sessions, but would you mind just kind of giving us a preview of what that means, that idea of a grace-based marriage?
Yeah, absolutely. So the whole kind of summation of grace marriage is this idea of living out the gospel in your marriage,
Hmm.
the grace that we receive from Christ, the salvation that we receive, and that we are not perfect and we are still loved in that. How do we take that grace and then extend that to our spouse, because we're two imperfect people making a life together.
Yeah.
So often our culture is this performance based. We're performance driven. If you do good, then I will do good to you. And so we get caught in that cycle in our marriages. We get caught in that cycle just in life. And so grace marriage is consistently coming back to this idea of how do we shift our focus? How do we go from this performance based model to, if you do good to me, I will do good to you, and shift that to the idea that we are extending grace
Hmm.
because our spouse, because we love them, because they're created in God's image. How do we reach across those barriers when they're having a bad day and reach out to them
Hmm.
and love them and extend grace and say, I'm still going to be here. I'm still going to treat you the way that I would on the days you come home in a good mood. Not excusing bad behavior or poor treatment of us, but extending and recognizing the humanity in our spouse and how do we love them in those moments of difficulty.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that was also one of the things that really attracted me to learn more about this ministry, is just how the gospel was so central
Mhm.
in a marriage curriculum. Just even the idea of marriage discipleship. I know
Yeah.
that the word discipleship can be a buzzword in ministries, and you just can tack it on to the end of anything, and everything becomes discipleship. But this one really, as I looked at it and kind of evaluated it, just as you're talking about, just the gospel is very central, and the message of grace is really a central concept in this, and that's really intriguing to me. Um, well, I'm sure this is true in churches, not just ours, but churches all over. We have couples that are attending our church who've been married, less than a year. We have married couples that have been attending or that have been married for many, many years, and of course everything in between. And we've kind of hinted at this a little bit already, Nikki. But who is Grace Marriage for? Who should consider joining us this fall?
Yeah. If you're married, then grace marriage is for you. I always say, you wouldn't as a parent say, I don't know, maybe I'll send my kid to children's ministry. You have a child, they go to children's ministry,
Hmm.
right? Like,
Yeah.
if you are going to be a part of the ministry that is the season of life that you are in. And so if you're a married person, disciple your marriage,
Yeah.
be in a marriage ministry. I find it so interesting. You mentioned tacking on discipleship to everything. We so often disciple individuals, and we have women's discipleship and men's
Yeah.
discipleship. But on all of our wedding days, we talked about joining two as one,
Yeah.
and we forget to disciple the unit. And so discipling ourselves individually is great, but what does it look like to look at discipleship from a perspective of us joining together and operating as a unit?
Yeah.
And so that's really what Grace Marriage does. So anyone who is looking to unify their marriage and figure out how to move as a unit and work through difficulties and be able to compromise well and just have a marriage that future generations look to and
Mm.
say, I want that. That looks like something that I would want to sign up for. So, yeah, anybody that is married should
Yeah.
be participating.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to being able to look around the room when we launch this and just kind of size up um, what I know of. Okay, this couple here, they're newly married, or they've been here a long time, and just see the diversity of ages and life stages and things like that. I'm envisioning, just even as people are starting to sign up, what that's going to look like. And yeah, because I know, just as a pastor, is on a Sunday morning when I stand up in front of our congregation, I can see, in a sense, of who's out there, and all these different households and families and relationships that are represented there. And so I would agree with you. What a great way to say it. If you're married, this is for you. And so we've selected at our church 3 dates this fall. We're going to do this monthly to start out. For couples to take part in Grace Marriage, we're going to start Friday, October 3rd, and then November 5th, 14th, and then Friday, December 12th. All Fridays, 7 to 8:30 p.m. at our church. And we'll be hosting in here at our church. But Nikki, what can couples expect at one of these 90-minute Grace Marriage sessions? When they come and be a part of this, what's an evening going to look like, probably?
So, in a 90-minute session, what couples can expect is that you are going to start off focusing on one of what we call rhythms in Grace Marriage. So, if you look at marriage research across the board, if you look at studies that ask, what can you do to make your marriage thrive? The consistent things that come up overall are the themes of gratitude, showing appreciation, being grateful, extending forgiveness, communication, developing intimacy with your communication and communicating well, and quality time, investment in that quality time in your relationship. And so, Grace Marriage Curriculum operates with those rhythms in mind, of always wanting to start off our session with one of those key factors. And so, you're going to start off focusing on gratitude, communication, or investment through quality time, one of those at each session. And then you are going to dive deeper into what we call our core lessons, which are going to focus on what are the most common tension points
Mm.
in
Yeah.
marriages. Things like technology, finance, communication styles, conflict management, intimacy. And so that's going to give you a chance as a couple to do self reflection, looking at where you're coming from, what is your perspective, and then how do you reach across and come together with your spouse on these things? How do you start to navigate together as a couple, creating a plan? And then you're going to find a place to really start to make a plan and have actionable steps that you can take into that month in between to really focus on intentionality and investing in that part of your marriage, and being able to focus on that. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned those kind of actionable steps there, not just the evening we gather together as a group, but in addition to the sessions that we're going to host at our church, in the packet that we'll be giving our folks, the Grace Experience packet that we're going to be providing, there's something in there called weekly check-ins. Nikki, can you tell us a little bit more about what those are, what we can expect with that?
Yeah. So, something that you will hear throughout Grace Marriage is intentionality. And everything in our life takes intentionality. If you want to get healthier, if you want to be a better parent, if you want to be better at your job, all of those things, you have to be intentional with your time and what you do with it. Weekly check ins are the tool that we have incorporated into Grace Marriage that allows you to revisit those rhythms of gratitude, connection, or communication and investment throughout your weeks. So weekly check-ins are going to give you a point to set down. We usually recommend the beginning of the week. Just it's a great time to start. And you're going to focus on gratitude. You're going to plan your one-on-one time, that quality time with your spouse for the week,
Hmm.
whether that is a dedicated date night where you're grabbing a babysitter and going out, or you're just having coffee on your patio.
Hmm.
But making sure that you're setting aside and planning for it, because if you don't plan, it probably likely won't happen.
Yeah.
Life is going to squeeze it
Yes.
out. And then it's going to give you some questions like conversation starters where you can develop more communication to get past the everyday just errand talk
Yeah.
of
Yes.
who's getting who, where, what appointments do you have, what's for dinner, that we so often kind of get stuck in that rut. And so that's going to give you a kind of structure, personality week in and week out.
Perfect. I'm looking forward to that. I mean, and just that idea of intentionality and um, my personality is I'm a planner, I'm a box checker, and but I would resonate with that of if you don't plan it, if you don't put it in your calendar, if you don't make a the tyranny of the urgent life, the unexpected is just going to crowd it out, and it's easy to think, yeah, well, we'll just do that next week. Um,
Yeah.
and it doesn't happen. And so I love having a tool that's going to hold me accountable and hold us accountable as a couple to again invest in our relationship. And so I'm so excited to kind of dive into this material together. Now we know that every church is different, every couple is unique, and so we don't fully know yet how God's going to use grace marriage at our church. I'm looking forward to 3 months from now to be able to reflect back and see what the Lord has done. But that said, I would imagine that just over 10 years of grace marriage here, that you've probably heard some stories, some testimonies from married couples and local churches about how grace marriage has been a blessing. Nikki, would you mind just sharing maybe one or two of those stories about how you've seen God use grace marriage in other churches and other couples?
Yeah. So personally, my husband and I are in year 8 of not only participating but facilitating with Grace Marriage,
Hmm.
and that is something that has been just such a blessing to my husband and I.
Hmm.
We had very wise mentors in year 1 of our marriage that kind of instilled in us this idea of marriage investment. But it wasn't until we found the Grace Marriage curriculum that we were like, oh, this is like a consistent thing that we can incorporate in our lives. And over 8 years, we have seen it in our own family. Our son is 17 now, he's a senior. And watching him in his dating life and
Hmm.
navigating relationships and mirroring things that he's seen his dad and I do in our own marriage and the things
Wow.
that he looks for and prioritizes. Even when he got his first job, he said, now I made sure that I have Fridays off so you still have date night because he watches his little sister. And he was like, I got that in the schedule. And so it's something that is impacting um, just the generations around us,
Wow.
the young people that are in our lives, that see our marriage. They see us out on date nights and they say, y'all look like you're always having a good time. And that's something that I want the young people in our community to see. I want them to see a marriage that's vibrant. And that's what
Hmm.
Grace Marriage has given us because we prioritize, we have intentionality. But I've seen that over and over again in couples. So many couples have kind of started into marriage ministry and saying, we date when we can. But after a couple of months of that regular investment, they're saying, we're having weekly date nights.
Hmm.
We remembered how fun it was to be together. And they're enjoying their marriage again. And really, that's that's kind of at the heart of everything is
Wow.
having this marriage that you enjoy, that this is the person that you get to do life with. Something that Brad talks about all the time is that we are called to hold marriage in honor above all, in amongst everyone, that marriage is held in honor. And what better way for that to happen than to have marriages that are joyful,
Yeah.
where the spouses clearly love and respect each other and they're not complaining about one another. So that's really what I've seen just consistently over and over again in couples that have invested in their marriage, is that they have these marriages that are just joy filled, and you can just see it in them. So yeah, that's the biggest impact that I see.
Okay. What a great picture there. And just even as you're talking about the generational impact, that's a little bit of my daydream for this ministry. Again, I don't know how the Lord's going to use this long term at our church, but we're not opening it up to dating couples or engaged couples. But I'm hoping that there builds a reputation that maybe some of those couples start to say, "Boy, when we get married, we're going to sign up and we'll be a part of it," or at least the concept of, as you're saying, we want to invest in our marriage beyond the premarital counseling from
Right.
day one, and just make this a priority, and then again to keep the gospel central, to keep Christ. We often talk with couples that are engaged and going through premarital counseling about keeping Christ at the center of their marriage. And on the front end of it, I think that's an ideal, but you don't know what you're getting into yet.
Yeah.
And so I'm so grateful for an opportunity like this to help, again, encourage and strengthen and teach and hold accountable and all of those things that this is going to contribute to.
Yeah, I can tell you, I've been in student ministry for a long time. And currently in our marriage group, we have a couple who's in year one of their marriage. They just got married. I guess they're getting ready to celebrate 1 year. And she was one of my students. And so she has watched Grace Marriage at our church
Wow.
and, ministry over the years, and has seen myself and my husband and other couples that have been adult mentors for her. And so when she got married, she was like, this is a no-brainer. Yeah,
Yeah.
we sign up. Of
Yeah.
course we do this. It was just a natural thing that you were going to go into, which is very countercultural. I
Yes.
remember the first time that my husband and I went to a marriage retreat, and a single friend of ours saw kind of like a flyer for it, and he was like, "Y'all just got married. Are you already having trouble?" And we were like, "No,
Right.
we're going to go and invest in ourselves and take time away." And he was like, "Oh, I didn't know that couples did that."
Right.
Uh, so it is something that is very countercultural, that there is a bit of a paradigm that you have to break for couples
Yeah.
that view marriage, anything past premarital,
Yeah.
as this is because we're in trouble.
Yes. Yeah.
But that's just not the case.
No,
Yeah.
it isn't. And, maybe along those lines, Nikki, here, just kind of last question here as we wrap up. If somebody's listening to this and maybe they just kind of feel like they're on the fence about this, maybe their spouse is interested, but they're not quite as interested, or to be honest, maybe there's a little bit of pride setting in, like, oh, I don't want to leave the impression that our marriage is in trouble or anything like that. Somebody's on the fence about whether they participate or not. What would you say to them to just encourage them to prayerfully consider being a part of Grace Marriage this fall?
Yeah. I mean, my gut instinct is to say, just do it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a no-brainer. Um, but really, that is a reality. There is a pride issue. We're fine. And I think there is too sometimes hesitancy because there's a fear of things are going okay.
Hmm.
Do you really want to open a can of worms?
Yeah.
There is some fear there of, if we get into this, we're going to have hard conversations. And
Yeah.
maybe some of those things that we've been brushing under the rug and not discussing, that's gonna get scary. And so I would just encourage couples to step into it knowing that there's going to be hard things, but this is a place where you're going to be given the tools to have honest, open conversations. And the thing I like about it the best is, and they'll see this when they come to the Grace experience, the worksheets are asking the questions. You're not.
Hmm.
You're
Yeah.
not bringing up the
Yeah.
topics. The worksheet is. And so it feels a little less kind of antagonistic to be able
Hmm.
to have conversations about things that cause tension, whether it's finances or technology or um, different parenting styles or communication styles, whatever that is. Um, it's a non-threatening way to get to address these things. And so you get to approach kind of difficult topics in a way that feels just like, okay, this is just part of the activity and
Right.
we're just going to navigate this. And you're given these tools to do it. So it's not just opening it up and then saying, okay, have fun with that.
Yeah.
Um, I have heard over and over again, and this is not to stereotype, but it's just what happens. We see this. Oftentimes, husbands are the reluctant ones. But we hear over and over again from husbands, once they get there, they're like, man, this really was kind of fun. I enjoyed this. So even if you're reluctant, give it a try,
Yeah.
especially with the dates that you're doing at the end of this year. The Grace Experience is a great way to get in there and see what this is. And just kind of take a peek in there, because it is something that most couples aren't used to. It isn't your typical book study.
Yeah.
It's not your typical kind of event, just marriage conference where people are going to talk at you. It is very interactive. You're spending time with your spouse and having conversations, but it's guided,
Yeah.
and you're given the tools. So I would encourage anyone to just take the leap
Yeah.
and invest in your marriage. You're never going to regret that. Your spouse, that's the most important horizontal relationship you have. Like your kids are going to move out someday. All of these things change, but your spouse is the person that's going to be there. And if you keep investing in that, then you're never going to reach that point where you look across the table and think, who is this person? I don't know them anymore.
Yeah.
So just make the investment.
Yeah.
Would be my biggest push to them.
Yeah, I agree. It's like a lot of things. Just try it once, and we won't hold anybody to it if they this isn't for me. We'll release them. We are going to try to bribe people a little bit with some dessert on a Friday night. That doesn't hurt. So come for just a nice date night, get a little piece of pie or something like that. And no, I would agree. I'm excited to see what this is. I think we're going to be pleasantly surprised and just come out of this really excited to see how the Lord's going to use this at our church. So, well, Nikki, thanks for taking the time to talk with me today about Grace Marriage. Again, for folks that are listening, our first session is going to come up real soon, Friday, October 3rd, 7 o'clock, 7 to 8:30 p.m. And we are encouraging couples to just kind of make a date night out of it. We did it at 7, so maybe folks can go grab a bite to eat before. Maybe hire that babysitter for the night before heading over to church. Again, we're going to supply dessert, and it's just going to be a great evening of instruction and encouragement. But folks, that's going to do it for this episode of the Deeply Devoted podcast. We'll be back next week with another episode. And until then, have a great week, and thanks for listening.